Hey everyone, it's Brandy from Brandy Burrow Astrology, here with Jacob Cooper, author of two amazing books, Life After Breath, The Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. Jacob, so you're clinical social worker, Reiki Master, Certified Hypnotherapist. You do, I understand, past life regressions as well?
Yeah, and I'm not a Gemini, but I kind of act like one professionally. Jack
Right.
of all trades, kind of type. Yeah. I
Yeah,
love what I do. Yeah,
not a Gemini. You're actually a Taurus sun,
that's right. Yeah.
Aries rising, which good job being born right when the traditional house structure was going on in the sky.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And Aries moon, by the way. So I have been following you on social media. I've read this book. I'm reading The Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. Amazing, amazing books. And just of course following you on social media, I just knew I had to look at your chart because you just have this incredible story, incredible life. And I knew it was going to show up in your chart. In fact, I think it was right before I contacted you about an interview. I was like, Jacob has got to have something going on with Pluto or Pluto in the eighth house.
Wow, 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 wow.
You got Pluto in the eighth house. So I wanted you to come on. I wanted to kind of get into your astrology a little bit and, let you share your story. And yeah, let's start with Pluto in the eighth house in Scorpio in the home sign. So automatically, I know there is transformation and death and rebirth type theme in your life, but lots of transformation around the area of death because eighth house is death and rebirth. And
Wow.
that seems to be where the story starts.
And it's funny because, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not an astrologer. I know a little bit of it. Taurus and Scorpio are opposites, but they share, in the zodiac, they share a lot of the similar characteristics, and Scorpio rules death and stuff like that. So Taurus is a grounding sign, so I kind of ground all things of the death and the occult. Taurus is a very solid grounding sign, so we just kind of ground things. But it's a perfect day to have this, interview of spring equinox. And I spoke about a little bit in my book how spring is just a rebirth, but from the winter, there's a new life, there's a new chapter, from the decay, there's new life. One door opens, another closes, one door closes, another opens. So we're
You're
right
right.
in season.
Isn't
Yeah.
that perfect how that landed today? And right now, as we're recording, Pluto is in the eighth house in the sky. And
Oh
so
my God.
it just, that's astrology for you. It always tells the story.
Everything's in alignment. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, everyone is amazed that when I tell them that I'm a Taurus, they don't believe that. They think I'm a Sagittarius and Aquarius. And I wanted your opinion on sun signs because to me, your sun signs will tell like a small story of you.
Mhm.
I think Edgar Casey would say, all of our astrological makeup probably makes up to around 20 to 25% of ourselves, which is, a part of ourselves. But beyond that, we have a soul. And I think our soul has astrological influences, that could play a role within our lives. But, I've always was kind of stumped where people would ask me, well, two people born the same exact day, the same exact time, are they the same exact person? I would say no, but they might have similar paths in this life and they might have similar tendencies. And I wanted your thoughts to kind of clarify astrology and the soul and how they coincide or maybe, conflict to some degree. Yeah,
Sure. And so we look at this with twins because twins are born usually
that's right.
within minutes of each other and can
Right.
have very similar charts, but be very different people.
That's right.
And so, with the planets, there's certain qualities, and some people will take some qualities, some will take others. There's
Right.
lower octave, higher octave. And so there's still quite a variety of, I guess, personality you
Oh,
can take.
sure.
Um, so yeah, where astrology starts and where the soul enters. When I was learning astrology, it put me in kind of a philosophical crisis because I was like, how much free will is there? How much,
Right. Free will and
because
destiny. And yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And because astrology just seems to line up with just everything. And so, yeah, that's kind of my maybe lifelong research here is I tend to think I don't know. I tend to think like astrology is like kind of like a recipe. We're entering when planets are aligned a certain way, to come in a certain way, to come in with certain growth, to come in with certain circumstances, challenges,
Right.
strengths, weaknesses. Um, I might, just to be honest, where I'm at right now, I'm kind of like, I feel like astrology is like 80%. And then like the free will might be like 20%, but I just feel like there's so much fate and so many things lined up
Oh, sure.
to have this experience here.
What amazes me too is like I once had my chart read, and even something from my past life was, I forget where, but something astrologically was related to a past life that I had. So not only just this lifetime, but even past lives, could also be explained through astrology. So it blows my mind. It really does. I think part of the issue, though, is that pop astrology overtakes a lot of people's minds, and they look at, just a lot of the pathologized, stigmatized versions of the sign without really understanding the full story.
Yeah.
So as a Taurus, with people just think that I'm supposed to sit on my behind all day and have Doritos all day and just chill and whatever. But
Eat,
that's
sleep, repeat.
and just be a glutton. But no, I mean,
Yeah.
Taurus are very determined, very down to earth. You look at some of the great spiritual teachers, my birthday twin Shirley MacLaine, for instance, or Dr. Wayne Dyer were Taurians, Sigmund Freud as well. So, I think we ground a lot of this deep aspects of life and make it a part of this reality. Where other people are able to grasp onto it, understand it.
Mhm.
Um, that's what I love about Taurus is we ground things, where it's understandable
Wow.
and relatable.
Slow
Yeah,
and steady. And
that's it.
and hardworking. And yes, exactly. And you're right. Pop astrology is a thing.
Particularly to Scorpios or Virgos, it's just like, it's and Capricorns every sign has it, but you just have to that might be a very small stigma of it, but there's so much more than what a lot of people know about the actual sun sign. Bear in mind the rest of the chart as you were going into in the intro.
Oh yeah, the whole chart is important. The sun
Right,
sign is our personality. It's part of our purpose in this world, how we
right,
connect with the outside world. But there's so much more. You have to look at the whole
right.
chart and how everything's working together. And interesting, you brought up past lives in astrology. That's called evolutionary astrology. But yeah, and I'm even looking at your chart, looking at the south and north node, and it's square
That's right. That's it.
Pluto.
Yes, south
Yeah.
and north. Yeah, yeah.
And so, yeah, I'm glad you went there, because I was like, yeah, there's some interesting things. I can't look at a chart and tell someone who they were,
Right,
what year they lived, but I can
right,
say
right,
there's
right,
a theme with this, and you're
right.
bringing it into this life.
Oh, yes, that was it. I was in Sedona or something like that, and this, astrologer was looking at my south and north node and was able to kind of like explain a lot of stuff. But you're right, it's mostly like tendencies. You're not going to tell you like what country you were in or stuff, stuff like that, or what time frame, but some of the themes that might have happened, uh, are great. But um, no, but I love about astrology is once each person can know some of the similar aspects. To
Mhm.
me, it's almost like left-brained intuition. Like you're able to understand these things in a very logical, practical way and understand why you are the way that you are.
Right.
It could be very cathartic, I'm sure, for your clients.
And to embrace it. And that's what I try to get
Uh,
them to do. Like, a lot of people come and like, what's wrong with me? Why am I like this? And I'm like, no, nothing's wrong with you. You're perfect the way you are. You're supposed to embrace it and use it.
right,
And so that's what I try to do with clients, is help them
right,
understand their true unique selves.
right. In a society, we're so gaslit whenever we have issues or thinking that it's our fault. And really, I think really our pain is our purpose in a way. What we kind of struggle with is a big part of our life, and we're able to understand that there's a guiding force, there's an intelligence behind this. That it's not on us, but this was a path. We're able to trust in that path and evolve, through our astrological influences.
Right.
You know.
Love it. Yes, absolutely. Um, is it okay? Can we go into the near death experience that you write about in your
Oh,
book?
absolutely, yeah, yeah.
I love
I'm
it.
an open book, but two open books at this point. So not
Two
just
open
a
books.
open book, but two open books. Yeah.
Absolutely. And there's so much in your chart that, directs me to this story of your near death experience. Not only Pluto in the eighth, but your chart ruler, you're an Aries rising with Mars in the 12th house. So there is a theme about exploring the mystery in life. And
Mhm.
the 12th house is what's called life before breath.
I like that. I like that. Only a Gemini could come up with that one. I like it.
So
A wordswoman, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So I can just see like there is such a theme in your chart, in your life, and purpose with an experience like this. So I would love if you can just kind of go into what started the whole idea behind these books and can I say purpose in your life?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, it's behind all of my purpose. I know in everything that we do, we have a mission statement, right? For me, my mission statement all comes back to my NDE. That's really where my life began again in this life. But just at a very young age, September of 1993 was when I had pertussis, otherwise known as whooping cough, and I suffocated. I was in a playground with family, friends, and I lost all of my ability to breathe, hence the title Life After Breath. And this experience happened while climbing up on a ladder onto a slide, hence the title, The Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. But I lost any ability to breathe physically, but I was able to breathe the most depth in my life by letting go of my human breath and really surrendering to this breath of eternity. And so I really had this profound crossing over experience in my NDE, which I encountered, angels, God, soul family members, awareness of past lives, awareness of what I would do in this life. So it was a full-blown experience that I had on the other side, but something that I was able to practically take not only to my life, but more importantly, to give over to others. So I think there's two types of people, and I was very much like this kind of person where there's givers and takers, where you just take things for ourselves, but don't have anything to it. There's no momentum to it. And there's givers when you recognize that, hey, whatever happened to me isn't so much about me, but it's to have a ripple effect to someone else. And so that's what I really decided with my NDE. But I'm just so blessed at a time right now where people understand what an NDE is, thanks to the work of Dr. Raymond Moody, who's a friend of mine who coined the term NDE. But they're getting a lot more noticed. I mean, even you go on Netflix right now, you know, you look at Surviving Death, there's even, segments on NDEs. So it's becoming a household name, as it should, because advancements in medicine and science are really increasing and that incubation period is expanding between life and death.
Right, right. So it's becoming somewhat more normalized, or at least more normal in conversation.
More normalized, particularly too, with everything that's gone on with the last couple of years. And, that's really was the impetus of my title was Life After Breath, was really on a literal or metaphorical basis, people were losing their own physical, emotional, spiritual breath. And so how could we use that model, the near-death experience, to propel people, to be more resilient? And that's was really a big impetus behind my book, I would say, because so many times when we're surrendering, we just want to give up. But when we're suffering, we want to give up. We don't recognizing that surrender to a greater power is a great strength, to propel us forward.
Right, right. And I was reading in the new book, and this surprise, I did not know this, that it takes 27 to 30 years to process a childhood near-death experience. Am I understanding that right?
Yeah, no, I know my friend, her name is PMH Atwater. She's been a near-death experience researcher for several decades, even having an NDE herself. But yeah, most near-death experiences take several decades, but for children or infants, even more so. I know a friend of mine, Dr. Bernie Siegel, also, he wrote the book Love, Medicine, and Miracles, New York Times bestseller, but he had a NDE as an infant. And yeah, it does take a while. I think you have to understand from the psychological standpoint that NDEs are also very traumatizing.
Mm.
You're losing, at least for me, you're losing all functionality of your body and nothing's working, and then you have to just come back into it. So it's very complex, but it's also traumatic, which is why I think I'm able to remember it with such clear detail, but also something that I've very much kept close to me because of the trauma involved in it. For instance, I'm Jewish, right? So I look at Holocaust survivors, for instance, like some people, when they survive their Holocaust, they're very forthright with what happened. Other people, they just didn't talk about it until maybe 30, 40 years later to anyone because there's so much trauma to it. And not to equate NDE with the Holocaust, that's two totally different things, but trauma is kind of like that. We keep things close to you, or you will process it very quickly and clearly from day one almost.
Right. And I noticed your first book came out in 2020. And this would have been around the time you were going through your Saturn return,
Right,
and
right.
would have been, if I'm doing the math right, about 27 years. So you're kind of right at that mark when this book came out.
Wow. Well, timing is everything. It is. It is. That's amazing. So Saturn, if correct me if I'm wrong, that rules Capricorn, right? Is that right?
Correct.
So it's
And
very
you
much
have that
about,
in the home sign of Capricorn on your natal
wow.
chart. Mhm.
It's very much about duty and work and purpose and yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's fascinating the timing of that. And, about sharing your story, because when I look at your South Node in Leo, individuals with a South Node in Leo can come into this life, with a certain expectation on them, a certain standard, maybe certain traditions, like this is the way we do things, this is the way we do things in society. And the North Node for you would be in Aquarius. So it's about breaking free from expectations, standards, what other people expect from you. With sharing your story, if it's not too personal to ask, was there a struggle with kind of breaking free from maybe, I don't know, family tradition or just, society
Well,
tradition?
yeah, 1000%. I mean, for those listeners who read my book, I mean, I come from not a very traditional, but I come from an Orthodox Jewish family where it's, very rule oriented. There's dogmatic, kind of beliefs. So it's very much kind of by the book. It was very strict growing up with a lot of the rules. So this is totally different than anything that I had to do growing up with. So that was a part of it. I would say. But at the core, all religions have a deep spirituality, but they get overtaken by dogma or politics or stuff like that. You look at Christianity, even they talk about past lives, and it was, taken away maybe in the Council of Constantinople and like what is it, two or 300 AD or something like that. So I think free thought almost scares religions, right? Because then that means, you know, you're just adding to something that they want to control.
Right, right. And, so when I was looking at that in your chart, I was like, that had to have been, I don't even know what I want to call it, but just such an experience for you to even like, I have this story and this is so different than,
Right.
maybe family beliefs
Oh,
or,
sure. I mean, my family is more invested in this life than the afterlife. They're not woo-woo they're very grounded, practical, go to work, get a college degree, pay the bills, just be they're Geminis, but it's kind of like a Capricorn kind of home, like very about the work and the job and but well, also about service. Service is very big. But I would say though, is I've kept this very quiet. Probably maybe, a couple years ago is when I first started really talking about it to my parents. But my dad told me that after my NDE, I told him I was just 3 years old, but I said something happened when I was rushed by the ambulance to the hospital that day. I said it's not going to make sense to you now, but one day it will. And he recently just told me that, and I'll take credit for it. But yeah, I said something. Remember that day something happened, and most end of years they just even to this day words don't do justice. Like I didn't really know how to express all that I saw, but it's through reading a book by another NDEer named Betty 80, who had the book Embraced by the Light, which is a New York Times bestseller, that gave me the lexicon that this was a thing, like other people had this, and there was a term for it. So that was all very cathartic. So again, we all kind of do similar things, but again, if you're able to just identify what you're experiencing, what it is, you're able to own it more and not just have this thing in the ethers and something that is just too heavy to discuss.
right, right. And, kind of going back to that chart ruler of yours, that Mars in Pisces and such a healing sign.
Mm,
But Pisces also rules at 12th house naturally and traditionally, there is a drive in you. I would expect that. And I've read on your biography that you do help people with fear and anxiety. And there's even something maybe about you as an individual facing fears and anxiety and processing that. I really loved reading about how in your biography how you do help others with the fear and anxiety of death and
mm,
that exploration. And even in your chart, you got Neptune in the 10th. So there's something here about having a career with helping others,
oh,
healing,
wow. Wow.
spirituality. And so can you talk a little bit like what that looks like helping people? Is it just past life regression? Is it more than that?
Well, certainly, I mean, as a psychotherapist, a big tenet of what I do is something called exposure therapy, where if you're familiar with it, exposure therapy, for instance, anxiety, depression will tell us to run away from going on the airplane if we want to go on it, that we're safe running away from it. But in actuality, that fear grows bigger the more we run away from those things. The fear grows smaller long term, not short term. Short term is a spike in anxiety, or depression. We do the things that are bugging us, but long term, those feelings, dissipate with proper treatment, through gradual measures, through gradual steps. So the concept of death, something that people, have a big fear of, coming into my office and maybe talking about their viewpoints in it and understanding like maybe why they feel the way that they feel. And there's a box that they have with death in the afterlife and finding ways, eventually for people to color it differently. So maybe instead of seeing, an aunt or an uncle or a family member 6 feet under the ground, we're able to see them maybe in a different way and see the afterlife in that different way. So that's the kind of stuff that I try to do, is to help people to reframe that box. And it's just, a lot of it is cognitive behavioral stuff, like cognitive reframing, but just helping people to see what they're looking at in a different way. Because the power of belief is everything in our life. When we have a belief that's really fear-based, that's going to influence our decisions.
Mhm.
We have a belief that's more reflected in love and trust, acceptance, forgiveness, that's going to influence. So I think in a way, how it's hard to say like what comes first, the chicken or the egg, but our viewpoints on the afterlife or God will influence our life, and the life that we live will influence our viewpoints on the afterlife and God too. So it's all connected.
It's so fascinating. And I so resonate with what you're saying because, and a lot of people don't know this. I do astrology, but I also do tarot readings and I'm a psychic medium. So I do readings for clients to connect them with their loved ones on the other side or in spirit. And I grew up so scared of death. And
Mhm.
I mean, I wouldn't go to funerals. I just, the subject, it just scared me so much. And that fear left when I started looking into mediumship and not became, but embraced my medium gifts and
Right.
started using them with clients. And so I understand what you're saying, like running from it just makes it worse, but facing it and embracing it and diving into it is so healing.
With the readiness, yeah. I mean, I give this example in almost every interview, but like look at our planet right now. Obviously there's still flat earthers here, but there was a time when that was the dominant belief system where people thought that Earth is totally flat. But by being able to stretch those bounds, people saw that that was not the case.
Yeah.
And so I think people are more comfortable knowing what they know than exploring the unknown. And what greater unknown for many is there, than the afterlife or death? But NDEs and exploring this through different ways and having different angles of evidential awareness or encounters of the afterlife give people more weight to that there is more than just this. And they could have that unknown something that they view as friendly, and they can make the unknown known, you know.
Right. Right. It's just so beautiful. And it's just displayed so beautifully in your chart as well. One other thing I saw going on in your chart, going back to Pluto again, but Pluto is opposing Mercury in your chart. And so this can be kind of an intense aspect. It's an aspect that really makes you need to express values, beliefs, and your experiences to others. And so I just feel like this also just confirms why we got two books here,
Right.
why everyone is listening to your story. And but yeah, it's very interesting. And I love how that aspect really drives us to see the hidden things in life.
Mhm. Oh, absolutely. I don't think people come to hear me speak because of what I have to say necessarily. I think people come because it's something familiar that they're able to recognize in themselves. And I think that's why people are drawn to NDEs because, yeah, I mean, there might be some things that they take with them, but there's something very familiar with what they're talking about. How people engage with that familiarity is different. Some people really push it away, and because, like we said before, we're more comfortable with what we know than what we don't know, and we can engage with that with fear, trepidation, anger, all that kind of stuff, or we could allow ourselves to explore, and evolve and grow, you know.
Yeah. 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 Um, it's just such an amazing thing. And I'm so glad you share your story and you put that out there for all of us. Your books are very inspiring. uplifting, and give such a sense of peace. So I just want to share that with you. Can you tell everyone where they can find your books? Where's the best place to snatch them?
Yes, Amazon is, usually the best place, to purchase my books. But, I am trying to go a little bit more in terms of traveling and doing some events. So you could go on my website. I'm going to be in Lilydale, which is, right by Buffalo on August 8th. And I'm doing a book signing and talk there and trying to do a little bit more, cities around. I have something potential in Chicago, maybe California. But if you have a venue of a place you want to book me, just email me and we could do, a book signing and a talk there too. US, or potentially I'm trying to do stuff in the UK as well too. So
Oh, wow.
yeah,
Expansion.
I love it. It's again, that's my form of exposure therapy. I'm fine going on an airplane, but just everything added up and like, getting there on time, getting the ticket on time, that drives me nuts. But again, it's just that's how we grow. That's how we grow. It's just approaching those things and just having a different box for some of our fears. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I always tell all my clients, especially when we're talking about like North Node, where we get so much growth in life, I'm like, growth is always awkward, never
Yes.
comfortable. So if you're experiencing something awkward, just keep going.
That's right. That's
It's
right.
growth. And so, well, I will make sure in the description on this video that we have links to your books. I invite everyone to check them out. Jacob, I appreciate you just letting me look at your astrology and share a little bit of it with everyone, and just your time today. You're just a fascinating chart, fascinating person, fascinating story. So I really appreciate it.
Brandy, you're not just a fine girl, you're a brilliant girl. Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for all you do. You really are making a difference. And I love following your work as well too.
Oh, I appreciate that. Well,
Yeah.
hopefully we can come back and do this again, maybe a part 2, and continue the discussion.
Thank you. Be well.